Beneath the fractured moon, a queen's shadow bled into the eternal frost, whispering secrets that even the stars dared not hear. Ilara's breath hung in the air like a fragile vow, each exhale a silver thread unraveling against the relentless bite of the northern wind. The mountains of Eldrath rose around her like jagged teeth, their peaks crowned in perpetual ice that gleamed under the Luna's pale gaze. She had been cast out here, into this forsaken wilderness, by the very pack that had once sworn to protect her. An Omega, marked by the Diusa's subtle curse, a sensitivity to the shadows that twisted her veins with an unnatural hunger. They called it abomination, a taint from ancient wars when vampires had prowled these lands, seducing the weak with promises of immortality. But Ilara knew better. It was no curse, only the raw edge of her soul, sharpened by rejection. The exile had come swiftly, under a blood moon 3 nights past. Her alpha, Thorn, the one whose mark she had borne with quiet devotion, had turned from her in the great hall of the Frostfang Citadel. His eyes, once warm as hearthfire, had hardened to steel. "You reek of the night," he had snarled, his voice echoing off the stone walls laced with frost. The pack had murmured their assent, their howls rising like a dirge. They dragged her to the gates, stripping her of her furs, leaving her with nothing but the thin shift that clung to her skin like a second betrayal. Banished to die in the snows, where the cold would claim what their fear could not. Now, as dawn's feeble light clawed at the horizon, Ilara stumbled through the drifts, her bare feet numb against the crystalline crust. The wind howled through the pines, carrying the distant weevos of wolves, her former kin, perhaps, or wilder beasts drawn by the scent of vulnerability. Hunger gnawed at her core, not the simple ache of an empty belly, but something deeper, a thirst that pulsed in rhythm with the moon's pull. She pressed a hand to her throat, where the faint scar from Thorn's bite lingered, a silvery crescent that burned now like fresh iron. It was her symbol, this mark of what she had lost, the color of blood, invisible to others but etched into her very essence, a reminder that love could curdle into venom. The forest thickened ahead, its branches heavy with rime, forming a labyrinth of white and shadow. Ilara's vision blurred, the world tilting as exhaustion claimed its toll. She collapsed against a boulder, its surface slick and unyielding, and curled into herself, the cold seeping through her bones like accusatory fingers. Why me? The question echoed in her mind, a philosophical murmur amid the storm. What strength was there in survival when every step led deeper into isolation? The Diusa had whispered dreams to her in childhood, visions of guiding lost souls through the veil, a pathfinder's gift. But the pack had dismissed them as Omega folly. Now, in this desolation, those dreams felt like cruel jests. A low growl pierced the gale, pulling her from her reverie. Ilara's head snapped up, her senses sharpening despite the fatigue. Through the swirling snow, a shape emerged from the tree line, a lone wolf, larger than any she had known, its fur matted with crimson streaks that steamed in the chill. No, not a wolf. The form shifted, elongating into the silhouette of a man, broad-shouldered and cloaked in a mantle torn at the edges, the fabric dark with what smelled of blood and ash. He moved with predatory grace, his breath ragged, one arm pressed to his side where a wound wept openly. She should have fled, instinct screaming of danger in this lawless expanse, but curiosity, that forbidden spark, rooted her in place. He was no ordinary wanderer. The air around him thrummed with alpha power, a aura that tugged at her core like an unanswered call. His eyes, when they met hers, glowed with the feral gold of royalty. The Alpha King himself, Ragnar of the Silver Claws, whispered legend among the packs. Assigned by the ancient council to purge the vampire scourge that plagued the borders, he had vanished moons ago, presumed lost to the shadows he hunted. Ragnar staggered closer, his boots crunching the snow, leaving a trail of dark droplets that bloomed like roses against the white. Up close, the wound was grievous, a gash from claw or fang, edged with the unnatural pallor of venom. Vampires. The word slithered through Elara's thoughts, unbidden. He collapsed to one knee mere feet from her, his gaze locking onto hers with an intensity that pierced the storm. "You? You're no phantom," he rasped, voice like gravel under thunder. "But you carry their scent, the thirst." Fear coiled in her gut, mingling with an inexplicable pull, as if the moon herself urged her forward. She rose unsteadily, the wind whipping her hair across her face. "And you carry death's echo, king of hunters. What brings a slayer to the arms of the slain?" He didn't answer, only watched her, his breath sinking with the howl of the wind. In that moment, under the watchful Luna, the collar of blood at her throat warmed, a subtle pulse that spoke of destinies entwining. The snow fell heavier, blanketing them in silence, as the first threads of connection wove through the fear, instinctive, denied, yet undeniable. What was redemption, if not facing the monster in the mirror, and perhaps in the eyes of another? The wind's lament carved deeper into the night, carrying the metallic tang of blood that mingled with the pine's sharp resin. Elara's heart thundered in her chest, a wild drum against the cage of her ribs, as Ragnar's golden eyes held hers, unblinking, searching, like a predator assessing not prey, but a mirror to his own unraveling. The snow swirled around them in frantic veils, blurring the line between exile and intruder, between the hunted and the hunter. She could feel the pull, that ancient tether woven by the Deuce's hand, drawing her toward him even as every instinct screamed to flee. He was the Alpha King, the scourge of the undead, his name etched in ballads of silver blades and crimson victories. Yet here he knelt, broken, his mantle a ragged shroud soaked in the evidence of his failure. Ragnar's breath came in labored bursts, fogging the air between them, each exhale a confession of pain he refused to voice. The wound at his side gaped like a mouth accusing the moon, its edges blackened by the venom that only vampire fangs could wield. Elara's own thirst stirred unbidden, a shadow uncoiling in her veins, responding to the scent that clung to him, rich, vital, laced with the forbidden allure of the night creatures he had sworn to eradicate. She took a step back, her bare feet sinking into the drift, the cold a sharp reminder of her fragility. "Stay away," she whispered, though her voice cracked like thin ice, betraying the curiosity that bloomed amid the fear. What madness was this, to pity the king who embodied the very justice that had cast her out? He rose slowly, his movements a testament to iron will over shattered flesh, one hand clutching the hilt of a dagger at his belt, its blade etched with runes that glowed faintly under the Luna's light. "The thirst in you. It's no mere fancy of the pack's," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the frost-laden air. "I know it well. I've spilled rivers of it." His gaze flickered to the scar at her throat, the collar of blood pulsing warmer now, as if recognizing kin in his torment. Ragnar had been the council's blade, dispatched to the shadowed vales where vampires nested, their queens weaving spells of eternal night. But the whispers among the scouts spoke of a deeper wound, a betrayal in the royal halls, a rival alpha who coveted his throne, allying with the undead to unseat him. Guilt shadowed his features. Etched in the lines of his face, a melancholy king who had lost more than battles. Elara's mind raced, fragments of old tales surfacing like ghosts in the storm. The vampire queen, they called her, Lilithara, the eternal seductress who had ensnared alphas before, turning loyalty to ash. But that was legend, a specter to frighten pups. She was no queen, only Elara, the Omega tainted by dreams that tasted of blood and moonlight. Yet as Ragnar swayed, his strength ebbing, she felt the instinctive bond flare, a Omega's call to heal, twisted by her hidden hunger. Denied, she rationalized it away. Survival demanded caution, not compassion for a slayer who might see her as the monster he sought. A distant howl shattered the fragile truce. Not wolf, but something fouler. Vampiric thralls, their cries echoing from the tree line like shattered glass. Ragnar's head snapped toward the sound, his body tensing, the alpha in him rising despite the venom's fire. "They're coming," he growled, drawing the dagger with a fluid motion that belied his pain. "The Queen's shadows, they tracked me from the citadel ruins." His eyes met hers again, a flicker of recognition passing through them, fear mirrored in curiosity, the first crack in his armored resolve. Ilara's pulse quickened. The Pax had feared her for less, but here, in this stranger's gaze, she saw not revulsion, but a haunted understanding. She could run, vanish into the labyrinth of snow and shadow, leave him to his fate as the Pax had left her. Freedom whispered of solitude, of the cold's merciful embrace. But the color burned, an insistent reminder that destiny was no gentle guide. It clawed and demanded. Against her will, she stepped forward, her hand hovering near his wound, the air between them humming with unspoken tension. "If you're to die, King, it won't be alone," she said, the words escaping like a vow she hadn't meant to make. The connection ignited then, instinctive and raw, born from the shared specter of rejection, his guilt for failures unspoken, her shame for the thirst that marked her other. The thralls burst from the forest, spectral forms with eyes like burning coals, their claws extended in silent hunger. Ragnar lunged, his dagger flashing in an arc of silver, slicing through the first with a spray of ichor that sizzled on the snow. Ilara dodged, her body moving with an unnatural grace, fueled by the adrenaline of the moment, grabbing a fallen branch as a makeshift weapon. The fight was visceral, a blur of fangs and fury under the moon's indifferent watch, the wind whipping blood across their faces, the cold amplifying every grunt and clash. One thrall lunged at her, its breath foul with decay, but Ragnar was there, shoving it back with a roar that shook the drifts. In that chaos, their eyes locked again, a silent pact forming, enemies of the night, bound by the storm. As the last thrall fell, crumbling to ash that scattered on the gale, Ragnar slumped against the boulder, his chest heaving. Ilara knelt beside him, her fingers brushing his arm, tentative, electric. The empathy stirred, transforming fear into something fragile, a bridge over the abyss of their wounds. "We can't stay here," she said softly, the Luna casting long shadows that danced like promises. "The Queen's reach is long." He nodded, his hand covering hers for a breath too long, the denial in his eyes warring with the pull. Together, they moved toward the cave's maw, hidden in the cliffside, a temporary refuge from the pursuing dark. The snow muffled their steps, but the collar of blood thrummed, weaving their fates tighter as the night deepened its secrets. "And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel, and at what moments of the night they find you." The cave's mouth yawned like a wound in the mountain's flank, swallowing them whole into its shadowed embrace. Ilara's fingers trembled as she guided Ragnar deeper, her touch lingering on his arm longer than necessity demanded, a tentative anchor against the vertigo of their shared peril. The air inside grew thick with the scent of damp stone and ancient moss, undercut by the coppery bite of his blood that trailed behind them like a scarlet ribbon unfurling in the dark. Her bare feet scraped against the uneven floor, each step sending jolts of cold up her legs, but she pressed on, the choler of blood at her throat a steady thrum, as if the Deusa herself urged her forward into this fragile alliance. Ragnar leaned heavily on her, his weight a forge of muscle and resolve, his breath hot against her ear in ragged bursts that stirred the fine hairs at her nape. The venom coursed through him visibly now, veins darkening like ink beneath his skin, twisting his features into a mask of restrained agony. Yet his eyes, those golden depths forged in royal fires, never left her face, watching with a mixture of wariness and something deeper. Recognition, perhaps, of the mirror she held to his fractured soul. "This place, it's no sanctuary," he murmured, his voice echoing softly off the walls, laced with the gravel of pain. "The thralls will circle. Lilithara's command binds them tighter than chains. Lilithara." The name slithered through Ilara's mind like frost creeping over glass, evoking the legends whispered in the pack's fireside tales. The vampire queen, eternal and merciless, her court a labyrinth of silk and fangs hidden in the frozen vales beyond Eldrath. Ragnar had been the council's chosen blade, dispatched with a host of Silverclaws to end her reign, to sever the tendrils of her influence that snaked into the mortal packs. But the whispers spoke of his fall from grace, not in battle, but in the quiet betrayal of a rival alpha, one who had poisoned the king's ear with ambitions of his own throne, allying secretly with the undead to ensure Ragnar's doom. Guilt clung to him like the snow on his cloak, a melancholy shroud that made his ethical core, his unyielding duty to protect the innocent, feel like a curse rather than a crown. Ilara led him to a shallow alcove where the cave widened into a natural chamber, its ceiling spiked with icicles that wept slow tears into shallow pools. She eased him down against the wall, the stone unyielding beneath his form, and knelt to assess the wound. Her hands hovered, hesitant, the thirst in her veins awakening to the proximity of his life force, a pulsing temptation that she rationalized as mere survival instinct. "Lilithara," she echoed, her voice a whisper threaded with curiosity and denial. "The queen you were sent to slay, does she haunt you still, king? Or is it the shadows you've become?" The question hung between them, philosophical and probing, as she tore a strip from her shift to bind his side, the fabric staining crimson instantly. His hand caught her wrist, gentle yet firm, the contact sending a spark through her like lightning over ice. "She haunts us all," he admitted, his gaze distant, fixed on the flickering light from a crevice high above where the moon's glow filtered in, casting silvery veins across the floor. "I tracked her to the Citadel's undercroft moons ago, her eyes. They promise eternity, but deliver only chains. I struck true, or so I thought, her heart pierced by my blade. Yet her essence lingers, spawning these thralls, twisting the night against me." The confession cracked his voice, revealing the ethical dilemma that gnawed at him. A king who had sworn oaths to eradicate evil, now questioning if the evil lay in the merciless purge itself. What was strength, if not choosing mercy in the face of monstrosity? His guilt was a living thing, born of the lives he'd taken and the pack he'd failed, leaving him adrift in this exile of his own making. Outside, the wind howled a warning, rising to a frenzy that rattled loose stones from the entrance. Ilara's senses sharpened, the choler pulsing in rhythm with the encroaching threat. A chorus of guttural snarls filtering through the gale, the thralls regrouping under their queen's spectral will. She rose swiftly, grabbing a jagged rock from the floor, its edges biting into her palm like a vow of defiance. Ragnar struggled to his feet beside her, dagger in hand, his body swaying but unbowed. "Together," he said, the word a bridge from fear to fragile trust, their eyes meeting in the dim light, hers wide with the raw edge of her hidden hunger, his shadowed by the weight of royal duty. The thralls poured in like smoke given form, their pallid skins gleaming unnaturally, eyes burning with Lilithara's borrowed fire. The first lunged, claws raking the air, but Ilara swung the rock with surprising ferocity, cracking its skull and sending it crumpling into the pool with a hiss of evaporating ichor. Ragnar moved like a tempest contained, his blade a silver blur that severed limbs and throats. Blood, cold and viscous, splattering the walls in abstract patterns of red against gray. The cave became a crucible of chaos, the clash of fang on stone, the wet tear of flesh, grunts mingling with the thrall's unearthly keens. One pinned Alara against the wall, its breath a fetid cloud that stirred her thirst to a fever, but Ragnar's roar shattered the moment. He tackled it, driving his dagger home with a force born of protective fury. In the Frey's heart, their movements synchronized instinctively, an Omega's intuition weaving with an Alpha's command. She dodged a swipe, her body brushing his in the tight space, the contact electric, a spark of empathy igniting amid the violence. He shielded her from a flanking strike, taking a shallow gash to his shoulder that drew his own warm blood, mingling with the cold spill on the floor. As the last thrall dissolved into wisps of shadow, banished by the moon's encroaching light, they stood panting, backs pressed to the wall, the air heavy with the aftermath's metallic tang and the faint, acrid smoke of vanquished undeath. Alara's chest heaved, her gaze finding his in the sudden silence. The fear had ebbed, replaced by a tentative warmth, the bond forming not from desire, but from the shared forge of survival. She reached out, tracing the new wound on his shoulder with trembling fingers, the color of blood warming as if approving this union of the broken. "You fought for me," she whispered, the admission laced with wonder and resistance, rationalizing the pull as mere necessity. Yet in his eyes she saw the mirror of her own shame, his guilt for the queen he couldn't fully slay, her hidden thirst that echoed Lilithara's legacy. Ragnar's hand covered hers, holding it there against his skin, the touch a silent confession. "And you for me, Shadow-bearer. In this refuge perhaps mercy finds its way." The moon's light deepened the chamber's shadows, pooling around them like spilled silver, as the wind outside softened to a mournful sigh. But deeper in the cave, unseen echoes stirred, whispers of a greater pursuit, a rival's treachery unfolding under the Luna's watch. The bond tightened, empathy blooming into something profound, a choice between isolation and the redemptive fire of connection. What was destiny, if not two wounds seeking the same healing light? The cave's depths exhaled a chill that seeped into Alara's marrow, wrapping around her like the ghost of forgotten oaths. The moon's silver tendrils filtered through cracks in the stone above, painting the chamber in fractured light that danced across Ragnar's pallid face, highlighting the shadows, carving hollows beneath his eyes. They had barricaded the entrance with fallen boulders, the effort leaving her muscles aching, a dull fire in her limbs that mirrored the venom's slow burn in his veins. Blood, his and the thrall's, stained the floor in dark pools that reflected the Luna like shattered mirrors, and the collar at her throat pulsed with each heartbeat, an insistent rhythm urging her toward truths she dared not face. Ragnar sat against the wall, his broad frame slumped yet unyielding, the makeshift bandage at his side already darkening with fresh seepage. His golden eyes, dimmed by exhaustion, fixed on her with that haunting intensity, as if she were a riddle etched in the stars he could no longer read. The air between them hummed with unspoken questions, thick as the frost clinging to the icicles overhead. Alara knelt at a small pool fed by melting ice, cupping the frigid water in her hands, willing it to soothe the thirst that clawed at her insides. Not just hunger, but a deeper yearning, a shadow's call that had always set her apart from the pack. She splashed her face, the cold shocking her skin, but it did little to drown the visions flickering at the edges of her mind. Paths unseen, veils parting to reveal the hidden veins of the world. "You've been quiet since the fight," Ragnar said, his voice a low rumble that echoed off the damp walls, stirring the silence like a stone into still water. He shifted, wincing as the movement tugged at his wounds, the scent of his blood rising sharp and vital, teasing her senses until her fangs, subtle, retracted, ached in her gums. Denied. She turned away, rationalizing the pull as the cave's oppressive closeness, not the bond weaving tighter between them. "That grace you moved with. It's no Omega's instinct. The shadows bend to you as if they know your name." Alara's breath caught, the water dripping from her chin to mingle with the bloodied floor. She met his gaze, her own eyes, storm gray, flecked with an unnatural silver, holding a wariness born of years hiding her gifts. The pack had called them curses, dreams of guiding souls through the veil between life and death, glimpses of destinies tangled in moonlight and blood. Pathfinder, the old seers had named it in whispers, a rare mark of the Deusa for those who walk the edge of worlds. But in the Frostfangs, it was heresy, a taint linking her to the vampire's eternal night. "Shadows know no names," she replied, her tone laced with melancholy, the words tasting of ash on her tongue. "They only claim what is lost. Like you, King. Hunter turned hunted, your blade turned against your own light." He reached out, his fingers brushing hers where she steadied herself on the stone. The contact a spark that ignited the air between them. Warmth flooded her veins, chasing the cold, and for a moment the collar burned hot as if sealing a pact. Ragnar's touch lingered, ethical restraint warring with the curiosity that mirrored her own, his guilt a palpable weight in the gentle pressure. "I've spilled enough blood to drown regrets," he confessed, his voice cracking like ice underfoot. "Sent by the council to end Lilithera's curse, I pierced her heart in the citadel's depths. But she rises in fragments, thralls, whispers, the very venom that poisons me now. My rival, Kale of the Iron Paws, betrayed me there, allying with her remnants for the throne. I am no king, only a blade dulled by failure." The wind outside moaned, a distant howl threading through the gale, carrying the foul echo of more thralls circling the mountain's base. Alara's vision blurred, the cave tilting as a wave of dizziness crashed over her. The thirst surged, not as torment, but as clarity, a gift unfurling like a rose in frost. She gasped, clutching her throat where the kohler throbbed, and the world shifted. Shadows peeled back from the walls, revealing hidden paths, glowing veins of silver light snaking through the stone, leading deeper into the mountain, away from the entrance's peril. But more. A vision bloomed in her mind's eye, vivid and visceral. Lilithera's form, ethereal and regal, her skin like porcelain under moonlight, eyes crimson as spilled wine. Not slain, but bound, her essence fractured into the thralls, waiting for a key to reform. And that key. Alara saw herself, her blood mingling with the queen's in ancient rite, a lineage buried in Omega tales, the Deusa's daughters, pathfinders who could bridge the veil, heal or unravel the undead's chains. The revelation hit like a thunderclap, her body trembling as the gift manifested fully. She staggered, visions assaulting her. Ragnar's past, his blade sinking into Lilithara's chest, not in victory, but in a moment of forbidden connection, a fall from duty that mirrored his growing pull toward her. You didn't just hunt her," Alara whispered, her voice ethereal, echoing with the moon's timbre. "You felt her. The queen's shadow lingers in you, as it does in me, my thirst. It's her echo, the Pathfinder's mark to guide the lost through eternal night." The collar glowed faintly now, visible in the dim light, a crescent of blood-red light pulsing like a heartbeat. Ragnar's eyes widened, gold flaring with shock and dawning realization. He rose, ignoring the pain, grasping her shoulders gently, his touch grounding her amid the torrent. "The key," he breathed. The words, a revelation unto themselves. The ancient scrolls spoke of a guide, one who could sever the queen's fragments or bind them anew. Not destruction, but redemption, mercy over slaughter. His guilt cracked open, spilling into wonder, as he saw her not as tainted, but as destiny's hand. The Omega whose hidden light could redeem his fall, turning the hunter's blade into a healer's touch. The bond ignited fully then, resisted no longer, accepted in the raw truth of their shared wounds, his melancholy duty, her rejected gifts. But the howls grew closer, thralls clawing at the barricade, stones rattling like bones in the wind. Alara's vision sharpened the path ahead, a silver trail leading to a hidden chamber where fire's warmth waited, and perhaps Lilithara's true heart. "We follow this," she said, her voice steady now, the gift of fire in her chest. "Or the shadows claim us both." Ragnar nodded, his hand in hers, the collar binding them as the cave trembled with impending confrontation. Under the Luna's gaze, revelation birthed not fear, but purpose, the ethical choice between endless war and the redemptive bridge she offered. Blood, fire, and moonlight converged, whispering of fates entwined in the storm's heart. Subscribe if you believe mercy can crown even the fallen. The silver path unfurled before them, like a vein of moonlight etched into the earth's frozen heart, guiding Alara and Ragnar through the cave's labyrinthine bowels. Her hand remained clasped in his. The warmth of his palm, a defiant ember against the encroaching chill that clawed at her skin, seeping through the thin remnants of her shift. The collar of blood at her throat thrummed with insistent fervor, each pulse a whisper from the Deusa, urging her onward into the unknown. Visions flickered at the edges of her sight, fragments of paths diverging like cracked ice, one leading to shadowed isolation, another to the fiery forge of union. But doubt coiled in her chest, heavy as the mountain's weight above, questioning if this gift was salvation or snare. What was freedom, if not the solitude she had known in exile, untainted by the thirst that now bound her to a king's unraveling fate? Ragnar's steps echoed hers, labored yet resolute, his free hand gripping the dagger's hilt as if it were an anchor to his eroding sense of duty. The venom's dark threads spiderwebbed further across his skin, visible in the intermittent glow of the silver trail, but his golden eyes burned with a renewed clarity, fixed on her as if she were the moon's own revelation. "The chamber ahead," he murmured, his voice a gravelly thread woven into the damp silence. The scrolls named it the Veilheart, a nexus where the Deusa's daughters once communed with the Veil. If Lilithara's essence lingers, it will call to you there. His words carried the weight of his guilt, a melancholy confession that he had sought destruction where perhaps mercy was decreed. The rival's betrayal, Kael's poisoned whispers, and secret pacts with the undead had shattered his throne, turning the Silverclaws against him, branding him a fallen king who consorted with shadows. Yet in her he glimpsed redemption, a moral crossroads where love might eclipse the war he had waged. The tunnel widened abruptly, spilling them into a vast chamber where the air hung thick with the scent of ancient incense and smoldering embers. Stalactites wept crystalline tears into a central pool, its surface a mirror of rippling silver that reflected the moon's full gaze, piercing through a jagged skylight high above. At the chamber's heart stood a weathered altar of obsidian, etched with runes that pulsed in rhythm with Alara's collar, symbols of blood and binding, evoking the Deusa's eternal dance between life and the endless night. But the sanctuary was no longer empty. Shadows stirred at the edges, coalescing into forms that chilled her blood. Thralls, more numerous now, their eyes aglow with Lilithara's crimson will. Flanking a figure cloaked in iron-gray furs, the rival alpha, Kael, his sneer a blade honed by ambition. Kael's laugh reverberated off the walls, a hollow bark that mocked the sacred hush. "The hunter returns, dragging his pet shadow to the altar," he taunted, his voice laced with the metallic tang of triumph. Behind him, a contingent of Silverclaws, Ragnar's own pack, their loyalties twisted by Kael's silver tongue, emerged from hidden crevices, their howls a dissonant chorus that drowned the wind's distant wail. Ilara's heart seized. Among them, she recognized faces from her exile, Thorn, her former mate, his eyes narrowing at her with renewed contempt, the scar of his bite on her throat a shared accusation. The pack that had cast her out now converged here, drawn by Kyle's decree, their blades drawn under the luna's indifferent light. Betrayal's echo rang through her. They had branded her abomination, yet followed a traitor who bartered with the very darkness they feared. Ragnar tensed beside her, his body a coiled spring of alpha fury, but he held back, his grip on her hand tightening, a silent plea for the mercy she embodied. "Kyle," he growled, the name a thunderclap in the chamber, "your alliance with the Queen's remnants ends here. The Council's blade was mine by right, not your poisoned ambition." The air crackled with tension, the pool's surface rippling as if the veil itself quivered. Thralls advanced, their claws scraping stone like nails on bone while the pack encircled them, furs matted with snow and blood from the mountain's treacherous ascent. Ilara's vision surged, the Pathfinder's gift unveiling the threads, Chael's pact with Lilithara's fragments, trading pack lives for undead power, his war not for protection, but dominion. And deeper still, a glimpse of Thorn's regret, buried under loyalty's yoke, his rejection of her a fear-fueled echo of the pack's crumbling code. The confrontation erupted in a storm of motion, blades flashing under moonlight, thralls lunging with feral grace, the Silverclaw's howls mingling with snarls of confusion. Ragnar broke free, his dagger a silver arc that felled 2 thralls in a spray of ichor that sizzled on the altar. His movements a testament to the ethical king unbroken by venom. Ilara dodged a pack warrior's swipe, her body guided by the silver paths now vivid in her mind, leading her through the fray like whispers from the Dusa. But Thorn cornered her against the pool's edge, his eyes stormy with conflict, the choler burning as if scorched by his gaze. "You bring ruin, Omega," he spat, his blade hovering. "Your taint drew them here. The Queen's shadows follow you like a curse." Pain lanced through her, not from the threat, but the raw wound of past rejection reopening, blood, metaphorical and real, welling in her soul. "And you cast me to die for it," she countered, her voice steady amid the chaos, the gift lending her words an ethereal weight. "But this is no curse. It's the key to unmaking the chains Chael forged." Her hand rose instinctively, the collar glowing crimson, and a vision poured from her. Thorn saw it too, flashes of Chael's treachery, the undead bargains that had cost pack lives. He faltered, blade lowering, a moral fracture in his resolve, forgiveness or loyalty, truth or the war of denial. Across the chamber, Ragnar clashed with Chael, their forms a whirlwind of claw and steel, blood spilling hot onto the cold stone, staining the runes in visceral red. "You doom us all for a crown," Ragnar roared, pinning the rival against the altar, dagger at his throat. Chael's eyes gleamed with fanatic zeal, thralls swarming to his aid, but Ilara's gift flared brighter. She traced a rune with her finger, the pool igniting in silver flame that repelled the undead, forcing them to ash under the luna's purifying light. The pack hesitated, Thorn stepping back, his face etched with dawning shame. Yet Chael twisted free, lunging at Ragnar with a venom-laced claw, the strike drawing a gash across the king's chest that mingled their blood on the altar. Ilara rushed forward, the collar searing as she placed her hands on the stone, channeling the vision's culmination. A choice crystallized in the pooling crimson. Forgive the Queen's fractured soul through binding, or wage endless war, freeing herself from the bond's pull. Love with Ragnar meant embracing the thirst, weaving their wounds into destiny's tapestry. Freedom meant severing it, leaving him to his guilt, the pack to their illusions. "Ragnar," she whispered, her voice cutting through the din, eyes locking with his amid the blood and fire. "Mercy or slaughter, the veil demands our truth." His golden gaze held hers, guilt warring with the redemptive fire she ignited, the chamber trembling as the Deuse's judgment loomed. The wind howled through the skylight, carrying huevos of the wild, as the moral precipice yawned beneath them. Forgiveness, a bridge to union. War, a solitary fall into shadow. In that suspended breath, under the moon's unyielding watch, Alara felt the weight of rebirth teetering on the edge of her soul's fragile choice. The chamber's air thickened with the acrid smoke of banished thralls, their ashen remnants swirling like ghosts in the silver flame that licked the pool's edges, casting elongated shadows that clawed at the obsidian altar. Ilara's hands pressed against the stone, the collar of blood searing her flesh like a brand of divine reckoning, its crimson glow pulsing in sync with the runes that now bled light into the pooling crimson. Ragnar's and Kyle's mingled life force, a visceral testament to the war's toll. Her vision fractured the chaos into crystalline clarity, paths converging under the moon's unblinking eye, each thread a moral filament demanding her surrender. The wind howled through the skylight, a celestial dirge carrying distant weavos that mourned the pack's fractured loyalties, while the cold seeped from the walls, wrapping her bare skin in an icy shroud that amplified the fire raging within. Ragnar's roar shattered the din, his body a tempest of sinew and fury as he wrestled Kale atop the altar, claws raking furrows in the rival's iron-gray hide. Blood sprayed in hot arcs, staining the silver flames red, the metallic tang invading Alara's senses like an unwanted lover's breath. Kyle's eyes, wild with the venom of ambition, locked on hers for a fleeting instant, accusation and desperation intertwined, before Ragnar's dagger plunged true, sinking into the traitor's chest with a wet, final thud. Kyle gasped, his form convulsing, the life ebbing from him in a gurgle that echoed the chamber's dripping stalactites. The pack fell silent, Thorn stepping forward with hesitant grace, his face a mask of dawning remorse, the scar on Alara's throat a shared phantom pain that bound their past in unforgiving silver. But the victory rang hollow, for Lilithera's essence stirred in the depths of the pool, a spectral form rising like mist from a grave, porcelain skin veined with moonlight, crimson eyes mirroring Alara's own thirst. Her queenly silhouette, a distorted reflection of the Omega's hidden lineage. The vampire queen, not slain, but splintered, her fragments woven into Alara's bloodline by the Deusa's ancient weave, daughters of the Veil, pathfinders born to bridge the eternal night, not conquer it. You, Lilithera's voice whispered through the air, ethereal and laced with tragic hunger, are my echo, child of shadows. Bind me, or let the war consume all. The kohler burned hotter, Ilara's body trembling as the gift surged, a torrent of visions unveiling the choice's core. Sacrifice her solitude to cure Ragnar's venom through union with the queen's essence, redeeming his guilt in a ritual of blood and mercy. Or sever the bond, freeing herself to wander the wilds alone, leaving the king to his throne's poisoned crown and the pack to endless strife. Introspection clawed at her soul, slow and relentless as the frosts creep. What was rebirth, if not the death of the self she had clung to, the rejected Omega, adrift in exile's chill? Ragnar staggered back from Kyle's corpse, his golden eyes finding hers across the flame-lit expanse, blood streaming from his wounds, the venom's black web creeping toward his heart. In his gaze, she saw the ethical king laid bare. Melancholy etched in every line, his duty a chain forged in the fires of too many slaughters, now yearning for the compassion she alone could offer. Love was no reward, but a proving ground, demanding she embrace the thirst that had branded her monster, weaving it into redemption's tapestry. The pack watched, Thorn's hand extended in tentative alliance, their howls softening to murmurs of awakening faith, rejection's sting yielding to the Deusa's revelation. Alara stepped forward, the silver path beneath her feet igniting into a luminous trail that converged at the altar. The wind whipped her hair like banners of surrender, carrying the scent of pine and blood, the moon's light bathing her in a halo of fractured white. She knelt at the pool's edge, dipping her fingers into the rippling surface, the cold a shock that mirrored the ache in her chest. "Mercy," she whispered, The word, a philosophical anchor amid the storm, is the strength to heal what we fear. The kohler flared, drawing Lilithara's essence toward her like a moth to flame. The queen's form dissolving into tendrils of shadow that coiled around Alara's arms, tasting of ancient sorrow and forbidden tenderness. Ragnar collapsed beside her, his hand seeking hers in the crimson pool, their fingers intertwining, a union born of pain's forge, resisted no longer. The ritual ignited. Alara channeled the Pathfinder's gift, her blood mingling with his and the queen's fragmented soul, the kohler pulsing as a conduit. Venom ebbed from Ragnar's veins, drawn into the light like poison from a wound, his body arching in agonized release, a guttural cry escaping his lips that blended with the wind's wail. Lilithara's essence surged through Alara, not as conquest, but communion. A tragic merger where the queen's eternal isolation found solace in the Omega's warmth, her crimson eyes softening to silver before fading into the veil. Fire bloomed from the altar, not destructive but purifying, flames of gold and white licking the air, melting the chamber's frost into steam that rose like prayers to the Luna. The pack knelt as one, Thorn's voice breaking the silence with a vow of atonement, their shadows lengthening in submission to the reborn light. Ragnar's eyes cleared, gold unclouded, his breath steadying as he pulled Alara close, their foreheads touching in the flame's glow, the first tender bloom amid the scars. No immediate passion, only the quiet acceptance of wounds shared, love as redemption's quiet proof. His guilt absolved in her mercy, her rejection transmuted into destiny's crown. The collar cooled, its pulse a gentle lullaby now, symbol of the union that had cured the venom, sacrificed solitude for the pack's healing, and birthed a new era under the moon's benevolent watch. As the flames subsided, the chamber fell into reverent hush, snow drifting through the skylight like confetti of rebirth. Alara leaned into Ragnar's embrace, the cold yielding to warmth, the wind's howl softening to a whisper of promise. In this lunar temple, choice had forged them anew. Alpha and Omega, hunter and guide, entwined in the Deusa's eternal dance. Blood, fire, and moonlight converged at last, whispering that every wound could find its healer, every exile its throne. If your heart beat alongside ours, like, comment, and subscribe, because every soul that joins our moon keeps the flame of redemption alive.